about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the unsolved homicide of Julie Ferguson from March 20th, 1995. This happened in Maryland. She was 17 years old. How I got this case was one of her friends, which was completely ironic. She sent me an email, and her name was Julie Strobel. And the case that I worked for a decade while I was with the district attorney's office, the murder of Gail Matthews and her daughter. Well, Gail Matthews' sister, who I stay in contact with to this day, his name is Julie Strobel. Very weird. Anyway, I digress. This case has been featured, I guess, on Paula Zahn. I'm not even sure who that is, but I did watch it to get a little brief of the case, which I like to do before I start researching and determining some things. What I want to do is talk about the overall crime as is reported and what we know about it. And then I will get into what I think, who I think, based off of the evidence and what happened. So first, let me tell you that I always say this, it's relatively simple once you start deducing some things. For example, how the person was killed. Whether it be by gun, by knife, by ligature, whatever. That right there allows you enough to start deducing who we can rule in and who we can rule out. And I'm going to apply that method, as I always do, to this case and tell you exactly why, because I feel that that's very important. You know, for somebody, you know, like me who has, you know, decades or so experience with cases like this, I get so frustrated when I see people with no experience, or even people that have experience, and they will tell you something. Let's say they'll say, well, the killer was a white male. How do you know that? Do you know that because a witness saw a white male? Do you know that because forensically semen was left and it's a DNA profile and all you can tell that it's a white male? Or are you just saying that because it's cool to say that? Which I find that 95% of the people who think they know how to do this kind of work, that's what they do. I don't do that. Okay? You have to have knowledge. You have to explain your theory as to why. Okay? And I will do that, and I will show you how I came to the conclusion that I did. And it honestly, it only took me 24 hours, maybe 48. And I don't have everything. If I had the entire police report, maybe my opinion would change. But sometimes I think when you get too much information, it gets too convoluted. And therefore, your mind starts going 100 different things. When you break it down simply to its simplest terms, murder, this is the manner, this is the cause, this is where she was from, this is where she was taken, this is her victimology. You break it down to like 5 different categories, and you won't know the suspect by name. You know, I'm not a psychic. Well, neither is anybody else for that matter. But you'll be able to say, well, it was a sexual fetish. It was a, whatever, a thrill kill, whatever it is. You can determine that. At least I believe that I can, and my track record is pretty decent at it. If you want to go back and look at some of my videos. So, Julie Ferguson, 17. She works at a strip mall. And the strip mall has a lot of small malls in it, as you can see. It kind of reminds me of the yogurt shop murders. And I'm going to link that at the back end of this video so you can see the similarities. Because there is. And it's more than just working at a strip mall. She worked at a place called Linen and Things in this mall. She got off work at 9:30, and it appears, or I guess it's factual, she walked down to a liquor store and bought a soda. Now, why a liquor store? Well, I'm assuming because it was open. It's 9:30 at night. A lot of the stores probably are closed, but there are a few that are still open, the liquor store being one of them. She gets a drink, gets a soda. She has a bag of clothes and a purse. She goes out and sits on a planter box. And as you can see, this is the actual planter box, I believe, until I'm told otherwise, that she was sitting on. And this is her view of what, if she's sitting there, what she would have saw. Now, it's 9:30 at night. The liquor store is open. First indication I have is that not the safest place to sit. Now, a 17-year-old, you're probably not even going to think about it. But years of experience is going to tell me that a liquor store is not the safest place to sit. Now, why? Well, you can figure that out for yourself. You don't need me to tell you. Her friends are supposed to pick her up. Her friends do not arrive until just before 10 p.m. So now she has, she gets off at 9:30. She's got almost 30 minutes of wait time. At 9:50, she's seen talking to occupants of a car. Occupants. When her friends get there at 9:50, or almost 10 o'clock, she's gone. But her soda's there, still dripping with condensation. The average temperature that day was a high of 66 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is pretty warm for March in Maryland, and a low of 40-something at 3 a.m. So, not very cold. And her soda has condensation, which means it was taken out of the fridge at the store and set there rather quickly when she disappeared. Her body is found the next morning, about 4 or 5 miles away, at a place called Daisy Lane. As you can see here, I'll show you a couple maps in the overheads. Now, let's jump right to what I see. The first thing that I notice, other than the liquor store, is the highway system. Okay? Look how prevalent the interstates are there. It appears you could get off that interstate and be at that shopping mall in seconds. Now, maybe that's not true, but from the map, that's what I see, and that sticks out to me. In any case that's unsolved, you have to look at victimology. You have to look, and again, people like to just throw out the term victimology, when they don't know what it really means. It is the study of the victim. You have to know that victim inside and out. Now, why is that important? It's important because you need to know if she would or would not do something. Now, you don't know that 100% because everybody acts different in different ways and everybody has a different opinion. If you talk to Julie's mom, she may say one thing about her because that's all she knows. But if you talk to her good friends, they know additional things because Julie would share them with friends and not mom. That is typical. That's why it's very important to not just talk to relatives. Yes, you talk to them, you get one side of the story. You talk to friends and get another side. You talk to coworkers, get another side. Go back to their high school, and in this case, she was in high school. I believe she was a junior. Talk to her her teachers, associates. You ask questions like, did she do drugs? What was her dating situation like? Not only does that give you leads to follow up on, but it also paints you a picture of the victim. That allows you to do an assessment. Once you have the circumstances of her death, you can apply that and say, whoa, wait a second. She wouldn't do that. Now, how do we know that? Well, because her friends and her family said that she wouldn't do that. So that's very important about victimology. So with Julie, we know she's a B student, according to newspapers, and that was according to a teacher. Also quoted as saying, she's somebody that you would want your daughter to be. When I hear something like that, it makes me think of just a very good person. Everybody has their flaws. Everybody has their skeletons. But in this case, and in general, Julie Ferguson, is a good person. No known enemies. Now, that leads me to GSR. Now, everybody that has watched my channel and videos in the past, you know what GSR. For you that are just coming here watching this because of Julie, or you're aware of the case, let me tell you what GSR. GSR stands for greed, sex, revenge. Those are the three main categories that an unsolved homicide, or any homicide, doesn't have to be unsolved, falls under. Now, that's not it. There's subcategories for each one. Jealousy falls under, revenge and stuff like that. But for the most part, for me, that's how I like to do it. I group murders under GSR. Now, how do you know whether a murder falls under one of those categories? Well, you can deduce to figure it out just by victimology, okay? Victimology, she has no known enemies, okay? So you think, initially, you could probably cross off revenge, right? It's not foolproof. Example. There was an individual named Victor who had used an illegal credit card at Linen and Things, and Julie had to turn him in. He, in turn, allegedly made some threats, including leaving her alongside the road. So, although Julie doesn't have any known enemies, and she's a good girl, there's always something. Right? I'm a good dude. All my friends will tell you that. Yet, there are some people out there that despise me, and I never even met them. So, if I ended up dead alongside the road somewhere, people look at my victimology, they're going to say, well, he's a good dude. Everybody says he's a good guy. But there's always something out there. You always can make an enemy, like Julie did by allegedly doing the right thing in having an enemy named Victor. So, although it looks like we can get rid of revenge out of the greed, sex, revenge acronym, We really can't yet. Because maybe something that happened with her credit card, and maybe this guy, Victor, could have done something, right? So we have to leave the R in there. Now, when Julie was found, there was no indication of sexual assault. So, off of the GSR model, you want to get rid of the S, right? There's no sexual assault. Not so fast, my friend. Because just because it appears that there's no sexual assault, meaning she is fully clothed, which Julie was, meaning there was no penetration, meaning there no signs, no physical signs of a sexual assault, no denuding of the skin, no rip, no tears, nothing like that. Wow, you're saying we could get rid of the S and say that this murder was not caused by a sexual motive. Well, you would be assuming too much there. And the reason being is, when she was found, she was bound, meaning her hands were tied behind her back. There are a lot of serial offenders who get off by just that, meaning hands tied, bondage of any sort. And sometimes they will not sexually assault the victim. They are happy to watch them bound, maybe even gagged. There's no indication that she was, but she was bound, and they will masturbate to that image at the scene. So because of that, when I look at GSR, greed, sex, revenge, when initially it looks like, oh, I can get rid of the R because of her victimology. Boy, it looks like I can get rid of the S because there's no sexual assault. That leaves greed. I can't do that, right? Because of what I just said. So sex is still a motive. So where do I go? I'm right back to GSR. Victimology and the body dump didn't tell me anything to deduce. But yet it did. Yet it did. When you look at the body dump location, okay, it's a back road. Some people say you wouldn't even know it was there unless you're from the area. I disagree wholeheartedly. I've been involved in cases where you think that, man, this is kind of, pretty far out here, whatever it is. Nobody knows this but locals. Did you ever go for a Sunday drive? It's a lost art. Used to be something that when I was a kid, I remember my parents, they would take me on a Sunday drive. And we'd just drive. And it's how you kind of learn back roads, and you'd be back on a road that you've never been on and see like a beautiful house or a farm, and you'd be like, wow, I never knew this was back there. And then you knew that that was a road. Sometimes people just drive around. They don't have to be familiar with a location to end up in a location, is what I'm trying to say. So Julie's body is found roughly 4 or 5 miles from where she was last seen. One small fact that I happened to stumble upon in a newspaper article that makes things very, very important. And I don't know why it's not talked about as much, or maybe it is, but I only seen a brief snippet of it, was that her identification was found on a road, an intersection, halfway between where she was last seen and where her body was found. That is extremely, let me say it one more time, extremely important information. And let me get to why. This is what I can say from years of experience, not just as a detective working on the job, because truth be told, we didn't have a million murders. But that didn't stop me from studying murders and going to school and getting my degree about murders. You know, those things, and running a cold case organization with the very best in order to study more murders. And then have a private investigative business where I did more murder. I've been doing it for decades. And this, because of that experience, this is relatively easy to figure out what happened. Okay? I'm still at GSR, greed, sex, or revenge. Although I can't tell definitively because of victimology or how the body was found, because of finding her ID halfway through, because of her hands and stuff being bound. Yes, you could say that it could be a sexual motive because of that, yet it's not. What you can tell from the hands being bound is that this was premeditated. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that's 100% sure, but I'm going to go on a limb and say 99% sure. Now, why? Now, it depends on what her hands were bound with. But from what I'm gathering, it was cord. Or even if it was shoelaces. If, let's say it's cord or rope. How many of you right now have rope or cord in your car? Not many of you. There's some, but not many. Now, depending on what that cord was, how long that rope was, if it was cut off, you know, just enough to tie your hands, whether it was pantyhose, whatever it was, I don't know that. Now, that would help me more, but I am saying that more than likely, this was premeditated. Okay? And because she wasn't sexually assaulted, and because of her identification being found halfway in between the body dump location or where she was killed and where she was abducted, leads me to one almost unanimous conclusion in my mind. And I say unanimous conclusion in my mind because I always have like 2 or 3 people talking in my mind back and forth saying, well, it is sex because of this. And no, it is greed because of this. No, it's revenge because of this. Well, all 3 of those talking voices, along with my inner voice, says unanimously that this was a robbery. Now, I think that is going against conventional wisdom. I think that's going against what the cold case detectives in Maryland believe. Because during that Paula Zahn thing, I believe one of the detectives said, we ruled out robbery because she had some money in her pocket. Remember in the very beginning when I said she left her soda and a bag of clothes, but she took her purse? Where is that purse? How do you know? I assume that the police should know whether she had money in that purse. Maybe the money in her pocket was just the change that she got back from buying the soda. And she had more money in her purse. And her purse has never been found. Her ID was. And it does not mean police don't have additional items that were discarded. But they did find that. And that tells me somebody was going through her purse. Now, more than likely, I'm not saying always because I've seen cases where this has happened, but more than likely, a sexual fantasy, an offender who is taking sexual liberties with someone against their will not go through their purse. Now, it could be secondary. Certainly, it could be secondary. But then I wouldn't think to find the identification halfway. I think you would find it more where the body dump location is after the murder. Then you go through the purse. Not in the middle. And what else does that tell me? It tells me there was more than one person. Now, how can you say that, Kenny? Well, very easy. If you look at where the location where the ID was found, I highly doubt one person. And it appears to me that the ID was thrown from a vehicle. I have a hard time believing that one person can control a 17-year-old female, drive, and go through her purse at the same time. Now, is it possible? Yes. But is it probable? I don't think so. So now we're looking at least two offenders. In my mind, through my deduction, that premeditated an abduction. And I'm not going to say it's rare, but for me, like the cases that I have gone through, it's rare to see an abduction that is not sexually related. Now, go back and we have a male video that I did of a male banker, Dan Short, who was abducted, and there was no sexual, and that fell under mostly greed. A little bit of revenge there too, because he might have been turned down from a bank loan. Remember that case? They duct taped this poor guy to a chair and weighted it down and threw him down alive into the river and drowned him. So you have Julie Ferguson getting off work at 9:30. She's hanging around that strip mall until almost 10 o'clock. At 9:50, a witness sees her talking to somebody in a red car. Now, what I didn't tell you is I seen 2 hours later, but I've also heard an hour later on Daisy Road, or Daisy Lane, where the victim's body was found, a very similar red car was found pulled off the road with its headlights on. And let's make no mistake about it, okay? I've said it before. I believe in coincidences. But I also believe in logic. If you see the victim talking to somebody in a red car, and remember the time frame is very short here. At 9:50, she's seen talking to this person or persons in this red car. Then an hour, 2 hours later, a red car is found exactly where her body is found, pulled alongside the road, not being passed, pulled off. That's not a coincidence, folks. That's your murderer. Okay? Go back to the yogurt shop murders. Remember I said there was a correlation. They were bound. But they were also set on fire, and obviously I believe there was 4 victims. And they were sexually assaulted. Here you don't have that. Here you have a girl bound and her throat cut. Now, I would like a look at the autopsy reports to tell me about the abrasions of her hands. Because if she was strangled, and I'm assuming she is, while those ligatures are on her wrist, she is going to have a lot of abrasions on her wrist, right, from being strangled and trying to get out and, preserve her life. Yet that's something that I don't know. Because now see, this is very important. If there are no abrasions on her wrists, that means she didn't struggle. So what does that tell you? That would tell me that the ligatures were put on after death. Now, why would somebody do that? There's only one reason somebody does that. To stage it. to make it look like something that it's not. However, I find that very unlikely. I think you will find abrasions on her wrist, and she was bound and strangled, and then her throat was cut as an insurance, meaning to ensure that she is dead. Yet, what I sit here and ponder is, if you have a knife, why not use the knife to kill? Okay? Strangulation oftentimes is a weapon of opportunity. Meaning, okay, there was no intent to kill, but something happened. Meaning, the victim recognized the people, somebody said something in the car that made Julie believe she knows who these people are, whatever it is. Then you strangle. But you don't use a knife, and you have a knife. That's troublesome to me. It makes me believe, one, that there was no intent to kill. But for some reason, you did. It also leads me to believe that the person who killed Julie, strangled her, did not have a knife on them. And why do I say that? It is hard. It is physically demanding to strangle somebody to death. It's not hard to strangle them to unconsciousness, but it is to death. The timeline here, 10 o'clock p.m. to when that witness saw the car on Daisy Lane at midnight. You have 2 hours. I just feel that strangling, and this is almost, it's hard for me to say, because I think of the victim's friends and family. And they have to sit here and relive this. They have to hear this coming from my mouth. And I don't like it. I don't like doing it. I hold the victims' families and their friends in the highest regard. But yet, you're looking for the truth. And it appears to me, because of the 2-hour gap, that strangling, when the decision came to strangle Julie, it did not come easy. Meaning, you can strangle somebody and they'll go unconscious, but then they'll come back. A lot of serial offenders will do that with ligatures. They'll do it manually too. That gets them off. You choke them out to unconsciousness and then you bring them back. I don't see that here as a purpose. I don't believe that was the intent, because I'm already ruling out the S in GSR. I'm also ruling out the R in revenge. And it's greed. And whoever did this, I don't believe are experienced murderers. I believe that one person, it's the alpha male in that car. And I don't know how many people were in that car, but make no mistake, Julie got in that car. There's no coincidences. Okay? She got in that car, and I don't believe it was somebody she knew. I believe it was strangers. But somebody in that car was an alpha male, meaning they called the shots. And when that person decided, hey, she can recognize us, or, you know, she only had $20 in that purse when they're going through it, pull out the ID. We know who you are. You know, We know where you live. Out the window. The decision is made. We are going to kill. Oh, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. Blah, blah. I'll do it. Strangles. She doesn't die. She keeps coming back. Because it's hard to strangle somebody to death. Especially for inexperienced people. You talk to Dennis Rader about that. He explains it. Those that don't know who Dennis Rader is, he's the BTK killer. So, I could see then a knife being used. And it is to ensure death. Hey, I've tried to strangle her. I'd be very curious also to know in the autopsy how much bruising was there around her neck. I bet you it was a ton. Because then they're like, just here, take my knife. Get me a knife. And that's the reason she wasn't stabbed initially. Then whoever else was in the car had the knife, gave him the knife, and unfortunately he slit her throat. That's what I see here. Now, one of the things that perplexed me a little bit in the beginning of this was her purse. Why did she take her purse? Okay. I believe, if you are planning on getting into a car with somebody, for whatever reason, let's say it's to smoke weed. Let's just say it's that. Car pulls up. You know the person. Hey, what are you doing here? Waiting for my friends. They should be here in about 10 minutes. Hey, you want to smoke a bowl? Sure. Why not? What don't you do? Not going to leave your bag of clothes or your soda there. Because you're not going to do it right there in the driveway. You're going to go find a parking stall at least. Also, let's say it was somebody she knew and she decided, hey, I'm out of here. I'm not going to wait for my friends. Can rule that right out because she would have taken her soda that she just bought. She would have taken her clothes. So why isn't her purse laying there? Why did she take her purse? I'll tell you exactly why. Because whoever called to her from that car, she didn't really know, but she was walking a distance from that planter box to the car. And she was conscious that I'm going to take my purse because I don't want to leave it there unattended, even though I'm only going, 10 yards. And she takes it. She gets to that car and she's abducted. Now, why didn't anybody hear any screams? Because you don't. You don't always hear that. It's fight or flight. Okay? If somebody in that vehicle had a gun, which I don't feel that they did, and that's why I don't think it's an experienced criminal that did this, but they had a knife. Okay? And they threatened her. Hey, come here. Let me show you this. Can you show me how to get to the interstate? I got off of it up here, but I don't know how to get back on it. Hey, you think you can show me? Yeah, sure. She walks over. All it takes to grab her arm or just to flash a knife and say, get in the fucking car or I'll gut you. Do you see how that came out? That's all you have to do to scare somebody. Okay, just don't hurt me. And you get in. That's why she has her purse. That's why her clothes and her soda are still there. She wasn't planning on going anywhere. She didn't know this person or people. More than likely, like I said, 2 people, maybe 3. They abducted her. She didn't scream. They told her if she screams, they're going to, stab her. So she complied. Did anyone hear Libby or Abby from the Delphi murders scream? Nope. Why not? Because they were threatened with a weapon. So make no mistake, she was abducted. And she was abducted for the purpose of robbery. I would like to say that if I had to profile the suspects, I would say they're younger. Now, why would I say they're younger? Because they're inexperienced criminals. But they're on the path of being professional criminals. Meaning, it wasn't like it was a football team member who just decided, to go out one night and rob somebody. No. It was pre-planned. They weren't probably from that town, but probably a neighboring town or city. And they were just inexperienced, but they were looking for money. But the one thing that threw me off a little bit was the day. I went back and looked, and it looked like on March 20th of 95, that was a Monday. It threw me off originally because I had thought, okay, this is probably a career criminal who's drunk. It's probably a Saturday. If I look up this date, it's probably a Saturday. When I saw it was a Monday, then I said, oh, okay, probably younger. Meaning not in high school, but probably just graduated. And the young 20 range. Somebody that is unemployed, has nothing to do other than hang around. Hang around and get in trouble. They were probably drinking. And they probably scoping out that mall area, the strip mall. And anybody would have been a victim. It just so happened that it was Julie. Here, she's 17. She's thin. She just came out of that store. It's closing up. She probably has money from the drawer. And it's pre-planned. Remember, they brought cords to tie somebody up. Okay, let's do it. Let's implement our plan. Let's put it into action. They were probably driving around that strip mall all night, on and off. I would have certainly checked that Wendy's for anybody that went through the drive-thru or ate there in that red car. Race? Can't tell. Can't tell off of that. But age, I believe you certainly can. Inexperienced criminal. But there was an alpha male in the bunch. 2 or 3 people in the car, for sure. Friends, probably still friends, but it's a secret that they're going to keep forever. Unless one of the underlings gets in trouble seriously for a crime. Then I would not be surprised if they flip and say, hey, I know what happened. This guy killed her, I didn't. He will try to distance himself or minimize his involvement. But that's okay. Then you get the facts. You get the true story of what happened. I'd be curious to know about the bloodletting where she was found. If her throat was cut there. Because if not, I believe everything happened inside a vehicle. Also, whether there was any drag marks to where her body was or if she was just dumped off the car. The witness seeing the car having headlights, that leads me to believe intoxication was involved. Now why? How can I say that? That's a big assertion, right? Because let's assume that is the persons who are responsible for Julie's death. You've already killed her, or at least she's bound. At least you've committed a felony kidnapping, right? And you're pulling off a side of a road. You're not going down a back road. From the map, there's lots of areas that you could tuck in at where you're not going to be seen. Yet you're just pulled off of the side of a road. And according to the witness, there was nobody in the car. So that means all occupants are outside of the car and the headlights are on. Now, what draws attention at midnight more than bright lights? Nothing. So it leads me to believe they were either intoxicated or inexperienced. Because remember, this is pre-planned. But you can pre-plan all you want. If things don't go the way it seems, things get screwed up. I.e., the Idaho murders. Brian Kohberger, in my opinion, went in there with a plan. It's a fantasy. He's been living it out for 3 months. He went in there and something happened. He got hit in the mouth. Wasn't expecting it. Saw somebody in there. Wasn't expecting it. His fantasy unravels. And he starts making mistakes. Leaving the sheath behind. Being quasi-ID'd by a witness. Mike Tyson said it best. Everybody has a plan till they get hit in the mouth. Okay? So, the headlights being on right alongside the road, to me, equals either inexperienced or inebriated or both. That's how I see this case, folks. Greed, sex, or revenge. Got rid of sex. Got rid of revenge. Greed is the only thing left. Her ID being found halfway between. They were rifling through her purse. They were looking for money. This was a robbery that led to a murder. I don't think the murder was pre-planned, but I do believe the robbery was. And it was by inexperienced criminals. Because, A, you don't have to tie somebody up in order to make them comply to give you money, right? But yet they did that. It's something an amateur would do. Somebody that's sitting there thinking, especially while they're drunk. Well, what do we need? Well, we need rope to tie them up. No, you don't. But then again, she's a random victim that's chosen. They didn't know if they were going to run into a 25-pound or 25-year-old white male that just got done working out or whatever. And they thought, hey, we could use this. But then they see Julie. Meek, mild, good-looking, young. They're going to have no problem controlling her. Plus, she just got out of work. She probably has money from the cashier register. We know she has money. She just went in there and bought a soda. That's it. We've been circling around this freaking lot for 2 hours. I'm tired of it. Let's get one. This is her. Get her. Making their action. They planned it, put it into action. That's my assessment of this Julie Ferguson case. A very sad case, but I think as any case, this happened in 1995, in any case that I've ever seen, and all the cold cases I've worked, the further out you get in years, the more rumors and innuendos cloud up what is a relatively simple case. Now, I can't tell you who did it, right? And the police obviously can't tell you who did it either. But you can get rid of rumors, it's this guy that she dated, he was weird, he had spider tattoos on his head or whatever it is, and everybody knew, and he's in jail for a murder. Well, you know what? It doesn't fit. So get rid of him. This guy used a credit card and she was going to turn him in. He was very angry. He even confessed to somebody in jail. Get rid of him. Because it doesn't fit. What fits is a robbery gone bad by more than one person. Whoever was in that red car. That's your killer, folks. That's your killer. So, that's it for this edition of Unsolved No More. I hope this helped somebody. Whether it's the police investigating the case, whether it's her family, whether it's Julie's friends, whatever it is. The goal here is to get this out. According to Google Analytics, the that sent me something the other day. My videos get seen in front of 6.5 million people a month. Well, I wish 6.5 million people would watch them, but that's okay. It gets in front of people. And maybe the right person will see the thumbnail, and they'll see the name Julie Ferguson. And they'll say, you know what? It's time. Because let me tell you something. As a advocate and a person whose whole life has been dedicated to cold cases and working cold cases, and being considered one of the best cold case detectives in this country and worldwide. I take great pride in that, okay? I love it. I will tell you, the one thing that solves cold cases more than DNA is time. Through time, allegiances change. Friendships change. Your perspective in life changes the older you get. We are not the same people we were when we were 19 or 20. The age of the people that committed this crime, I believe, younger, young 20s, late teens. Now it's 20 years later, you got kids of your own. And you sit there with the weight of this on your shoulder, and you know that you should do something. And you don't have any allegiance to that guy anymore. Maybe he's even a jerk to you. That's when cases are solved. That's when people come forward. Because you're not the same person you were 20 years ago. That solves cold cases more than DNA. So, that said, hey, thanks for watching. I hope this helps somebody. Thoughts, condolences. A moment of silence from me for Julie Ferguson. Mains out.